I never expected my summer in Cape Verde to turn out the way it did. I had just returned from Lisbon, where I was studying fashion design, and I was looking forward to spending a peaceful few months back home in Mindelo sun, beaches, my mom's home-cooked kashapa, and reconnecting with old friends. My mom, Dina, was thrilled to have me home. She threw a small welcome-back dinner with a few close friends, including her best friend, Tanya. Tanya had always been in our lives. She was like an aunt to me, someone who always gave me backhanded compliments and asked a little too much about my personal life. But that night, she came with someone new, her boyfriend, Rui. He was different. Charismatic, a bit older, maybe in his early 40s, but with a kind of presence that made the room shift when he walked in. He was tall, had deep brown skin that glowed under the evening light, and wore confidence like a cologne. I wasn't blind, I noticed him noticing me too. Not in an obvious, sleazy way, but in the way someone holds a glance a second too long. After that night, Rui kept showing up. Sometimes with Tanya, sometimes without. He'd drop by to bring something for my mom or to say hi. At first, I told myself I was imagining the tension. But it got real the day I was out walking on Laginha beach, and he showed up alone. Said he was clearing his head. We walked. We talked. And somewhere between the crashing waves and the sunset, his hand brushed mine. I should have stopped it there. I knew it was wrong. But there was something electric about the way he looked at me, like I was a woman, not just Dina's daughter. We started seeing each other in secret. Late-night messages, quiet meetups in places where no one would recognize us. The thrill of it all felt like something out of a movie. One night, when my mom was away visiting family in Santo Antão and Tanya was working late, Rui came over. We didn't even pretend it was about anything else. It happened, and it was intense, wild, guilty, passionate. But secrets like that don't stay buried forever in a small place like Mindelo. People talk. Whispers started floating around, and I noticed the way Tanya's smiles became tighter when I was around. My mom, thankfully, never caught on, at least not directly. I ended it a few weeks later. Not because I didn't want him, but because the weight of it all was too heavy. I couldn't look Tanya in the eye anymore. And I hated how every time my mom looked proud of me, I felt like a fraud. Rui moved back to Praia a few months later. I heard he and Tanya eventually broke up, though no one ever said why. My mom just thought things didn't work out, and I let her believe that. To this day, I don't know what that whole affair was really about: lust, boredom, curiosity. But it taught me something about temptation, consequences, and the parts of ourselves we keep hidden. Cape Verde is a small island, but sometimes the waves inside us are bigger than the ones we see from the shore. The day Rui kissed me, it was a Wednesday afternoon. The kind of day in Mindelo when the heat is heavy and everything moves slower. My mom had gone to the market in town with Tanya. They had plans to pick up fresh fish and then stop by a cousin's house. I had the house to myself, or so I thought. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of those light summer dresses that clings just enough to remind you it's there. I was cutting papayas for a smoothie, music playing low on the speaker, Caesarea Evora, of course. I remember the moment the door creaked open behind me, and I assumed it was my mom coming back for something she forgot. But it wasn't her. It was Rui. He stood there in the doorway, in a crisp white linen shirt, a half smile on his lips, like he knew he wasn't supposed to be there. My first instinct was to ask what he was doing, but the words caught in my throat. Something about the way he looked at me, slow and steady, made the air thicken. I thought they'd still be out, he said quietly. They are, I whispered, setting the knife down. He stepped closer. The room was silent now, no more music, just the hum of the fridge and the thud of my heartbeat in my chest. He didn't speak, and neither did I. He came close, closer than he ever had before when we weren't hiding in the shadows. The space between us felt dangerous, like if I moved even slightly, something would break. Then, with a silence that said everything, Rui reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered at my cheek. He leaned in slowly, like he was giving me every second to say no. But I didn't. His lips touched mine so gently at first it felt like a question. And I answered by leaning into him, my hands resting against the cool surface of the counter behind me. It was soft, slow, but there was heat under it. A hunger barely contained. His hands slid down my arms, holding me like I might vanish if he let go. It only lasted a minute, maybe less, but it felt like an entire storm passed through the kitchen in that moment. Then we heard a car door slam outside. We broke apart instantly. I stepped back, heart racing, wiping my hands on a dish towel like I was just cleaning or cooking. Rui straightened his shirt and gave me a look, half apology, half promise, before slipping out the back door. By the time my mom walked in, laughing with Tanya about something they saw at the market, I was back to cutting fruit, pretending nothing had happened. But everything had. That kiss changed the rhythm of our silences after that. It wasn't just about what we were doing anymore, it was about what we weren't saying. After that kiss in the kitchen, everything changed between Rui and me, not outwardly, of course. Around my mom and Tanya, he was careful, casual, the same charming man everyone liked. But behind their backs, in those stolen moments we created for ourselves, he treated me like I was the center of the universe. It started with little things. The first time he showed up with a small box of pastis de nata, my favorite. He said it was left over from a meeting as he handed it to me with that secret smile. But inside was a note, folded twice, for your sweetness. Not everything good is meant to be shared. My fingers trembled reading it, and I didn't know whether to feel guilty or wanted. Maybe both. When he saw me walking through the little shops in the market square one day, pretending not to notice him while my mom haggled over papayas, he slipped something into my bag without me noticing. Later that night, in my room, I found a delicate gold ankle bracelet with a tiny star charm. No note this time. Just a quiet message: I see you. He found ways to make me feel special without words. When we crossed paths at family barbecues or social dinners, his eyes would always find mine. He'd let his fingers brush mine under the table. It was nothing anyone could prove, but I felt it. The heat. The risk. One evening, after Tanya left for a church meeting and my mom had gone to Praia for a weekend seminar, Rui asked me to meet him at a guest house on the edge of town. It was one of those quiet, tucked-away places that tourists never find, with a balcony that overlooked the water. I remember walking in and seeing the room covered in soft candlelight. A bottle of Vinho Verde on ice, music playing low in the background, banner this time, old-school mourner that wrapped around you like silk. You deserve to be treated like a queen, he said, as he poured me a glass. And he did. That night, he didn't rush. He didn't treat it like a secret fling. He looked at me like I was his entire world, even if just for the night. He kissed every inch of me with care, like he was memorizing me, and held me like he couldn't bear the thought of letting go. You're not just a girl in the shadows, me princesa, he whispered against my skin. You're the fire I never expected. For those few hours, I forgot we were wrong. I forgot about my mom, about Tanya. I just felt seen, desired, important. But the world outside that room didn't disappear. We had to return to pretending, to glances and coded words. He still showed up at my mom's dinners, sitting beside Tanya, holding her hand while stealing looks at me across the table. And God help me, I let it happen. Because when we were alone, he treated me like I was the one he truly chose. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and I knew it couldn't last forever. But at the time, I didn't care. I was his secret queen, and every moment felt like I was living in a story too good to be real or to end well. Next day. It was on Thursday, one of those days in Mindelo when the air feels sweet with sea salt and possibility. I was lounging at home, pretending to read a book, but in reality, I was waiting for his message. Rui had a habit of texting in riddles, never too obvious, always cautious. At 3 p.m. my phone lit up. Meet me where the mango trees kiss the hill. Wear something that makes you feel unstoppable. I knew exactly what he meant. There was a quiet little lookout on the edge of Monteverde where the mango trees curved just so, and the view of the ocean stretched endlessly. Not many people went there anymore. It had become our place. I dressed carefully. Simple white sundress, thin straps, easy to slip on and off. And underneath, red. A lacy red bra and matching panties I had bought in Lisbon but never worn until today. Something about red made me feel powerful, alive, like I was playing with fire and loving the burn. Rui was already there, leaning against his car, sunglasses low on his nose and a look that made my stomach do flips. He opened the door for me without a word and we drove, silence sitting between us like a promise. We parked near the trees and walked to the edge, where the wind carried the scent of salt and mangoes. Rui stood behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist as he pressed his lips to my shoulder. You always do this, he murmured. Do what? Make me forget I'm not supposed to want you like this. I turned to face him, heart beating fast. He took a step back and looked me over, slowly, then said almost like a confession, but with a glint in his eye. Red. I don't know why, but red it drives me mad. I laughed softly, playing along. What about it? The way it looks on skin. Especially yours. The way it hides and hints at the same time. He moved closer again, his hands gentle on my hips. Red bra, red panties. That's how I imagine you sometimes. Not when I'm supposed to, but when I'm lying next to her, pretending not to see your face. The truth in his voice made my breath hitch. I didn't speak, I didn't need to. I just let the wind swirl around us as he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, deep, filled with everything we couldn't say aloud. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, hidden in plain sight, the world spinning far below us. And in that space, between mango trees and the sky, I let him run his fingers along the straps of my dress, letting him feel what he already knew. You wore red, didn't you? He whispered against my neck. I nodded. And he smiled like a man possessed, but calm, like he had just found his favorite sin. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows through the mango leaves as the breeze tangled my hair. Rui's hands were warm on my back, fingers grazing the strap of my sundress like he was memorizing the feeling. The air was thick with a silence that wasn't awkward, it was electric, charged with all the words we couldn't say out loud. I shouldn't be here, he murmured, his forehead resting lightly against mine. But I couldn't stay away. You always say that, I said, voice barely above a whisper. I always mean it. There was something different in his eyes that day, not just hunger or longing, but something rawer. Regret. Fear. I didn't know, and I wasn't ready to ask. Instead, I let my hands slip beneath his shirt, feeling the quick beat of his heart under my palm. Then, a sound soft, almost nothing. But it sliced through the moment. Leaves rustled behind us. A twig cracked. We both stilled. Did you hear that? I asked. Rui's gaze flicked over my shoulder. He tensed. Stay here. But I didn't listen. I never could, not with him. We both turned at the same time and saw nothing. No one. Just the trees swaying, birds in flight, a motorbike in the distance down the hill. Still, something lingered. A feeling. That tightness in your gut when someone's watching. Maybe we should go, I said, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was, skin barely covered, heart fully exposed. But Rui just looked at me again, and whatever fear or hesitation I saw in his face melted. He stepped close, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. Not yet, he said, and kissed me again, this time with more urgency. Maybe it was the red. Maybe it was the danger. Or maybe it was knowing this moment was stolen, that time was chasing us. But right then, with his hands on me, his voice in my ear saying my name like a prayer, I didn't care. We had until sunset. And sunset was still ours. Back in town, everything looked the same. People smiled. Cars honked. The bakery still smelled like warm bread and vanilla. But I had mangoes in my hair and Rui's hands ghosting over my skin, and everything felt different. What made it all the more thrilling and terrifying was that no one knew. Not my mother, who thought Rui was just a family friend, someone who helped with errands and always brought fresh fish on Sundays. She liked him, trusted him. He reminded her of my father, she said, calm, polite, always knowing when to leave or stay. And Tanya, sweet, sharp-eyed Tanya. My best friend since we were 12. The one who always guessed what I was feeling before I even knew myself. She had no idea. Or maybe she did. But if she did, she said nothing. To them, Rui and I were polite hellos and shared glances. A safe presence. A familiar face at gatherings. No one saw the way he'd press his leg against mine under the table. Or how I'd catch him looking at me like I was the only real thing in the room. If they knew, we'd be branded as reckless. Or worse, selfish. But we weren't doing this to hurt anyone. We were like angels, caught in a place too beautiful for earth but too imperfect for heaven. A secret space. Timeless and breathless. Somewhere only we existed, wrapped in silk and sin and everything that made our hearts beat faster. Sometimes, when I was back home and my mother asked me what I'd been up to, I'd smile and say, just reading. And Tanya would roll her eyes and say, you're always somewhere else lately. She wasn't wrong. I was. I was on Monteverde, with wind in my hair and Rui's mouth on my collarbone, both of us defying gravity. Maybe one day they'd know. But not yet. Not while we could still pretend we were untouched by consequence. Not while we still had the sky. Rui impregnated me. It started with the smallest things: morning queasiness I blamed on sweet coffee, a strange aversion to grilled fish, the scent of Rui's cologne suddenly making my stomach flip in a new way. I didn't want to believe it, not at first. I thought maybe it was nerves. Guilt. The weight of the secret we carried like a second skin. But deep down, I knew. My body was no longer just mine. I didn't tell Rui right away. I didn't even say it out loud to myself. I just started walking slower, eating differently, avoiding Tanya's eyes when she asked what was wrong, like she could see the truth pulsing under my skin. The night I finally told him, we were in the back of his car, parked just out of sight near the marina. Waves crashed in the distance, and the moonlight lit his face like it had so many nights before. I whispered it. Just 3 words. I'm pregnant, Rui. He froze. No gasp. No flinch. Just silence. Then his hand reached for mine, trembling, and he said, it's ours. It should have felt comforting. But it felt like we had stepped off a cliff, holding hands and hoping to grow wings on the way down. We decided not to tell anyone. Not yet. Not while the world still believed we were clean and distant and good. My mother still kissed my forehead every morning. Tanya still asked if I was seeing anyone and laughed when I blushed. Rui still played the role cool, composed, never giving anything away. I hid it well. Long dresses, loose tops, a quiet withdrawal from beach days and street parties. By the time anyone might have guessed, I was already planning my escape. At 7 months, I booked my ticket. Portugal first, then maybe Amsterdam. Somewhere quiet, anonymous. Somewhere I could become someone else. Rui helped me pack. He held me like he was trying to memorize the curve of me, the curve of us. He pressed his lips to my stomach and whispered something only the baby and I heard. I'll come find you. When it's safe. I left Cape Verde at dawn, heart heavy, belly full. And when my daughter was born, yes, a daughter, with Rui's eyes and my stubborn mouth, I held her close and named her Luz. Light. Because even in the dark, she was everything. Life in Lisbon moved slower, softer. No one knew me there, which was exactly what I needed. I found a small flat near Alfama, where the scent of grilled sardines filled the air and old women hung laundry like flags of surrender between the buildings. It was a place where I could disappear, just another young mother with too much on her mind and not enough sleep. Luz was perfect. She rarely cried, as if even in infancy, she understood that peace was something we had to fight to keep. Her eyes watched everything sharp and unblinking, just like Rui's. Some nights, I'd catch my reflection holding her, and it felt like I was holding a memory. A secret made flesh. Keeping it hidden became second nature. I had a script. To neighbors, I was a single mother. The father, they'd ask, sometimes gently, sometimes with sharp curiosity. I'd shrug. Didn't work out, I'd say, smiling like it didn't sting. Every photo I posted had careful angles. Every phone call with my mother was filtered, censored. We're doing well, I'd tell her. Lisbon is good to us. And she'd sigh, saying how much she missed me, how Tanya still asked about me sometimes, and I'd change the subject before the ache in my throat gave me away. But the truth, our truth, clung to me in quiet ways. Like when Luz fell asleep curled against my chest, and I'd whisper stories about mango trees and Monteverde and a man with a heart too big for the world. Or when I'd stare at my phone, thumb hovering over Rui's number, wanting to send a photo or a voice note, but never pressing send. Because secrets don't just stay hidden, they live with you. In the pauses. In the lies told so often they start to feel like truth. Still, some nights, I'd imagine what it would be like if we could be known. If Rui could walk down a Lisbon street with Luz on his shoulders, laughing. If I could call my mother and say she has his eyes, you know. But not yet. Because safety meant silence. And love ours, at least, was a quiet flame, still burning, still waiting for the right time to blaze again.